What's up, everybody? Jacob Burton here from StellaCulinary.com, and in this video we're going to go through and we're going to review your submissions for the Stella Culinary Food Challenge in our Facebook group. And we were calling this the Quarantine Challenge. This was put together by one of our mods, Joey McCraw. Now, if you're new to these challenges, it's something that we do in our Stella Culinary Facebook group, where we put out a challenge for something that you can cook, and then you post what you cooked in the submission. Pretty straightforward stuff. So in this challenge, it is make a pasta dish using only what is currently in your kitchen, your quarantine, remember. Use 6 items or less. Salt, pepper, oil does not count. Submissions will be taken until the March 31st. Then April 1st, we will hash through. This gives you 2 weeks. You should be able to revisit the post anytime by clicking the announcements at the top of the page. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, cool. So let's go into the comments here and see what our submissions were. So the first one was done by Walter, and it looks like Walter here, that's a beautiful looking dish. We got some bow tie pasta. It's a beef bourguignon over pasta, and a beef bourguignon is a classic braised beef dish, a lot of times done with short ribs, but the bourguignon part is from the Burgundy region of France. You use Burgundy wine to braise your beef, so it's a slow and low cooking method, great for early spring, winter time when it's still kind of cold out. Onion, carrot, garlic, parsley, mushrooms, and condiments. Thyme, beef bouillon, salt, pepper, butter, tomato paste, wine, flour. That's a nice, delicious dish. If I had to be locked up, I'd eat that for sure. Maybe even if I wasn't locked up. Next is Adam, and Adam says that he's disqualified. Mine had 13 ingredients, but it was still tasty. It's the Orchiette Bolognese, and it was onion, carrot, celery, ground beef, olive oil, Orchiette pasta. Orchiette is the ear, and I know I'm butchering that, but you know, hey. Pronunciation has never been my strong suit. Bay leaf, ground nutmeg, chicken stock, whole milk, Parmesan cheese. Only had the pre-ground stuff, which is, hey, look, I love the powdered Parmesan cheese. I mean, let's get something straight. It's not like, you know, true Parmesan, right? Like Reggiano, like the wheels that you get, but it has great umami. I think of it as a cheesy umami salt that you can sprinkle on everything, and topping on bread, tossing in some salad. I mean, it's a great seasoning. So there's nothing wrong with using the powdered Parmesan. Up next, we got Joey himself doing Orzo pasta with some stock, diced tomato, garlic, red pepper, basil, dry. Par-cooked orzo in water, saute with garlic, red pepper, and oil. Strain, add to saute, added stock, and diced tomato, dry basil, simmered and reduced until done. Next up, we got David DeLisa, another long-time Stella Culinary. In fact, he goes all the way back to the free culinary school days. He's also one of our awesome admins on the Stella Culinary Facebook group, so thank you, David. But his submission is fresh pasta, lion's mane, and oyster mushrooms, garlic, stock, parsley, thyme, and butter. And I assume when he says fresh pasta, it means that he made it himself, which that looks beautiful. And to me, one of the best things about fresh pasta is something just like this. It's super simple, has a really light sauce. So this could really just be butter or olive oil for your coating, some fresh herbs, some good high quality mushrooms. A good pasta does not have to be overly complicated. In fact, I'll put a link to my how to make pasta video so you can make fresh pasta, and also a pasta dish that I do with that, which is really just spring vegetables, because that's what I made at the time. So you had some fava beans, some fava greens, I forget what else I put in there, maybe some mushrooms. But really, it's super simple. All you do is you saute up your vegetables, your mushrooms, whatever you want your pasta to be flavored with, deglaze a little bit of white wine, maybe add in a little bit of butter, a little bit of olive oil, and then you toss in your fresh pasta, which cooks almost instantly in boiling water. So it comes straight out of the boiling water into your saute pan, toss onto a plate, and you have a delicious dish just like this. So that looks awesome. Great job, Dave, and thanks for doing the fresh pasta and being a go-getter. Next up, we have Torben Iverson. And Torben his entry is Hand-cut homemade ravioli stuffed with homemade ricotta and mushroom duxelle. For those who don't know, mushroom duxelle is usually minced mushrooms or ground mushrooms that you cook down in a liquid, usually a mixture of white wine and stock, and it becomes a paste. Very, very flavorful. It kind of releases the umami of the mushrooms. He put in pumpkin and kumara puree. Kumara is another word for sweet potato. Blanched broccoli sprinkled with toasted pumpkin seeds, served with lemon, thyme-infused beurre noisette. Beurre is butter, noisette is brown, so it's a brown butter. First time for making ravioli? Shows, right? Raviolis are tough, man. It takes practice. You gotta get the dough right, the thickness right, the sealing right. It's a whole thing. All from stuff I had on hand that was starting to approach the use-by date. And let's see what he has here. Honestly, for a first time, that looks solid. Now, a couple major things that I'm seeing here is, number one, it looks like your ravioli is a little bit too thick. And that's a hard one to nail, because if you go too thin, obviously, then you're gonna have issues with it bursting through on the bottom, which is not really fun either. I mean, that always sucks. So really, on my pasta maker, I normally do a mixture of durum and all-purpose flour for my ravioli dough. And I go on maybe about like a number 2 setting, which is usually a notch or 2 down from what you would want to do your fettuccine at. And then you seal it with water. I'm not a big fan of sealing with egg. I just a simple water to seal. And then to prevent those bust-throughs, as soon as you make your raviolis, you want to blanch them and then lay them on a sheet with some olive oil or something to keep them from sticking. And that will set the starch that's in your pasta dough, so then later you can go back when you're ready to actually serve and you finish cooking them so they're nice and hot, cooked all the way through, and you serve it. Puree looks good, nice and smooth. Broccoli is maybe a little bit unnecessary. I get you're trying to get your vegetables in there, but as far as a composed dish goes, I would have either just served it on the side. I mean, again, I'm not trying to, look, this is the quarantine challenge, right? I'm just kind of giving you feedback on your plate, which overall, for the first time making raviolis, it's looking pretty dang good. But yeah, I would say probably the broccoli is a little bit unnecessary as a garnish. So for this plate here, and the reason why I'm kind of picking on you is because I'm actually really stoked at your ravioli making. I mean, making raviolis is not an easy thing to do, and I'm glad that you're doing that. And the dish itself is very well composed and thought out, especially on your limited ingredients. And with a couple of tweaks, I think it could be really restaurant quality. So what I would do is the broccoli, I would just nix. I would just take that off completely. And then your puree here that you have, I would actually take this puree and go corner to corner with it like this, okay? So that's gonna give you some empty spaces right here and right here, which empty spaces are always nice for plate composition. Then I would take your actual raviolis, we'll do those in yellow, and maybe kind of like this. Oh, that's not a square, but you get the idea. So maybe make your raviolis small enough to where you could put 3 on the plate, right? Because odds are always more beautiful to the eye than even. It's a rule that once you know, you can break it when you want to. But if you make the raviolis a little bit smaller, then you put 3 on the plate instead of 2, and odd numbers are always gonna give you more visual appeal. Then I would just take your olive oil, which we'll do green here, or light green, and I would just drizzle your olive oil across the top of the plate. Then I'd come back with your toasted pumpkin seeds, and I would just do your toasted pumpkin seeds in a straight little line across the plate, nice and tight. And then I would take your green parsley here, and I would garnish across the top. So then what you have is you have basically your whole composition in one diagonal line across the plate here. And that diagonal line across the plate is going to be the line on top of which you build everything else. And you could even take your broccoli, if you actually want to keep your broccoli, maybe slice it in half, and so it's like thin chunks. And then you would take those that thin chunk broccoli, which we'll do in a darker green here, and maybe you just kind of like shingle it across the top. And by doing that, you have some negative space, which is great for drawing in the eye. And then you also have a tighter looking plate that's gonna look a little bit more sexy and professional. So again, I know this is the quarantine challenge. I'm not trying to go too far off into a rabbit hole, but I like the dish. I think you did a great job with it. And so with those couple little touches with your plating, it would have really taken the whole thing to the next level. So great job. Chris Hall's up next. Now, Chris, who's another one of our fabulous moderators over at the Stella Culinary School Facebook group, does cacio e pepe, really pronounced like this.
Cacio e pepe.
Thank you. With a lightly peach wood smoked chicken breast. Ooh, sounds delicious. Chicken breast had 3 hours salt sugar brine, then sous vide for 45 minutes, patted dry directly on hot natural coal, 2 minutes per side, then added peach wood chips on coals, place on offset grill and smoke for 5 minutes. The cacio e pepe is something I make often, but I tried something different this time. I prepared it as I do my risotto. And that's actually a great method for making pasta at home, is cooking your pasta all a risotto, which I'll put a link to that in the video description as well. And so Chris says he toasted the pasta and started adding boiling salted water, half a cup at a time until it was almost tender. Then lowered flame to medium, low, and started adding Parmesan cheese a bit at a time, consistently agitating the pan to form an emulsification. Finished with a couple pats of butter. Go to my page to see a pic of the whole process. But this is the finished dish, which looks great. Very, very tight. I really like the overall composition, especially the way that he did the pasta here, where he twirled it on a fork. And this kept everything really nice and tight in a straight line. Then he has the sliced fan breast next to it. Now, again, if I was doing this in a professional restaurant setting without upsetting the plating too much, probably what I would do is I would just take this pasta line right here, and I would go corner to corner with it. Again, you know, not getting up on the edge of your plate, which is a no-no. And then place your chicken breast slices right on top. It's going to give you a little bit more negative space on the plate, and then some sort of green over the top, a little bit of parsley or oregano, maybe even like a nice basil chiffonade, which is thinly sliced basil leaves. And again, it's just going to kind of tighten stuff up. Also, too, the black plates are really difficult. They tend to draw color out of your dishes, which makes them pop a little bit less. The light colors of the pasta and the breast actually work pretty well on the black plate, but just something to keep in mind in general. I'll very rarely use a really dark plate because it really saturates and pulls the color out of your dishes. So just something to keep in mind. Great looking dish, love it, and I love the fact that you use the pasta alla risotto method. That's a great method, and again, I'll link to that method in this video's description. Next up, we got Zach Wood. Leftover pasta fried in a non-stick low heat with tablespoon of EVOO. Pasta item number 1. Leftover fried onions, onions 2, flour 3. Leftover steak is 4. Garlic powder 5, parsley 6. Salt, pepper throughout. Olive oil, fry the pasta. Beef tallow to seal the steak. Originally after sous vide, it was flanked, by the way. So that's a nice little move. He reserved the fat that was rendered during cooking the steak sous vide and later seared it. Much flavor and such satisfying chew. Now, that's a really good tip. When you're making your stocks, when you're making your beef sous vide, or you're making a beef stock, that fat you skim. Again, I'll put a link in the show notes to it, but I have a video on how to actually take this rendered animal fat and clarify it, which will take out a lot of the proteins and other things in it that will burn, and then you use that for cooking. So you're reinforcing that flavor. So anytime that you can use the actual animal fat to cook the same animal in, so chicken fat for chicken, beef fat or tallow for your beef, pork fat for pork, etc., it's just going to add another layer of delicious goodness. So good job there, Zach. If I had a 7th ingredient, it would have been a squeeze of lemon, and really, lemon should have been free, or any acid of your choice, right? Acid is just as important as salt. Salt is free. I assume this was just an oversight by us when we were putting this challenge together, but in the future, I would say, when your ingredients are limited, acid is always going to be free. Always a little bit of either vinegar or lemon juice, something to make your dish pop. And he said this was fun, so let's look at the final dish. He nailed it, right? Nailed it with the plate up. So this is what I've been talking about. It's nice and tight. Now, this isn't the square plate that we've been seeing a whole lot of, but if it was, you could see the whole corner-to-corner thing like I was talking about. And by doing that, it keeps it nice and tight right in the center. And then you can see there's somewhat equal distance between all the edges all the way around, which is really good for overall composition. So he has a nice tight center line going down the plate, a little bit of a fresh parsley garnish right on top, and then he has a negative space, the equal distance rim all the way around the plate. So Zach, fantastic job with that dish. That looks delicious. Jan is up next. Jan is black garlic scarpinac. I have no idea what that even is. With fresh ricotta, brown butter, balsamic reduction. What the heck is scarpinac? Okay, let's do a quick little... Scarpinac, which I know I'm totally slaughtering the pronunciation of. It's actually pronounced like... Thank you. It's the name given to several ravioli pasta shapes in northern Italy, in the little town of Pare. This pasta looks like a clog or maybe a little bird, and is filled with cheese and breadcrumbs. Well, how do you like that, you damn overachiever? My 6 ingredients: eggs, flour, ricotta, leftover, black garlic, butter, balsamic vinegar, salt and pepper, olive oil. I chose this pasta shape because it comes from Bergamo in Lombardy, where the epidemic is currently hitting the hardest. Flavor-wise, the balsamic cuts through the richness of the ricotta quite nicely. That's going to be your acid component with a little bit of a sweetness to it. And the black garlic and brown butter adds some nutty complexity to the dish. In retrospect, I wish I had known that condiments were free. I would have loved to add some arugula, decorations, fresh herbs, but thought they would break my 6-ingredient rule. But sometimes simple is better. And you look at this, again, great looking plate with some negative space. He has the corner to corner. This is the plating technique that I've been talking about, where he has the nice corner to corner action. He's staying off the edge. It's equally distanced between the other opposing corners. Overall, very nice plate composition. If he had had his arugula to work with and some other garnishes, I'm sure it all would also be much nicer. Jan always turns in amazing plates during these culinary challenges. So great job, my friend. Very beautiful dish. And I learned something new. I had no idea what those were. I mean, there's so many different Italian pastas. You stuff it, crimp it, another little shape, boom, whole new pasta. All right, so next up, oh yeah, there you go. Looks like I wasn't the only one that didn't know what that was. We got Alan with his spaghetti alla carbonara with wild Gulf shrimp. Ingredients were spaghetti, bacon, diced onion, sauteed shrimp, beaten eggs, freshly grated pecorino romano cheese, plus a lot of cracked black pepper. Creamy, delicious. One of my all-time favorites, spaghetti carbonara. Again, beautiful, simple pasta dish with just a few key ingredients. Very delicious pasta. Sprinkle some shrimp on top, which isn't that classic, but solid. I would eat that every single time. And also, too, you look at the way that the sauce cling to the pasta. So you have really good cling there, which is showing you that the egg yolk with the pasta water and the rest of the ingredients formed a nice emulsification, and that emulsification gives a really light coating to the pasta. So a very technically sound dish. Next is Mauricio, and he says, this is my entry. It is fusilli pasta with tomato sauce and caramelized Amazonian nuts. The ingredients: tomato puree, caramelized Amazonian nuts, red onion, garlic, fish sauce, yes, and lamb demi-glace. So if you're new to the Stella culinary community, you might not know that I always sing from the tops of the mountains how much I love fish sauce and how it goes so good with other ingredients that are high in glutamic acid. Fish sauce contains glutamic acid, which is the ingredient that causes us to have things be perceptibly savory on our palates. And when you combine fish sauce, soy sauce, and tomato juice, or any just tomatoes in general, then you have a really savory, delicious sauce. So one of my favorite tricks is when I'm making pasta sauce at home using tomatoes, then I will add fish sauce to it. I do the same thing with my pizza sauce as well. And it gives you just a couple of dashes of fish sauce in your tomato sauce. Is just a delicious umami bomb. Looks like the coating is nice. Good light cling for your pasta sauce. Solid garnish right here on top. Good overall plate composition with the equal distance. Not a whole lot of junk here on the rims. Very solid plate. Nicely done. Next up, we have Caroline. Spinach lentil soup. Onions, black garlic, carrots, spinach, lentils, angel hair pasta. Salt and pepper, EVOO. If the parm on top counts, I'm disqualified. I think we can say parm is a condiment in this sense. Let's check out what she did. Now, I will say, I don't know how I feel about lentils and pasta together. I've never had them before, but it seems kind of like starch on starch. But, then again, Sometimes two starches do make a right. Angel hair pasta. Overall, the dish looks kind of soupy, and I don't know if that's intentional, but I would be careful in the future. If that wasn't intentional, you might just want to reduce your sauce in your pan a little bit more. So let's see if we have comments on how it turned out. No, so again, if you're happy with it, I mean, it's hard to judge by just a picture, but overall in general, I would say it looks a little bit soupy, and I don't know about the lentils. Definitely healthy, right? And definitely hearty. So if you're quarantined up and you're looking for a healthy, hearty pasta dinner, this would be the one. And then our final submission is from Miguel, and he says, this is my Cajun chicken sausage Alfredo. It was a one-pot cookery, heavy cream, Parmesan, and chicken broth made the Alfredo sauce, some bell peppers. Boom, 6 items. And looks solid. Penne pasta, a little bit of green onions on top. Now I will say, if we're going to be getting picky here, looking at the green onions, if we zoom in, you can see the rough edges right here, kind of how they're torn. And then also too, how some of them like this isn't even fully separated. So for your garnish, you want to make sure your garnishes are nice, cleanly cut. And I could tell that it is time for you to either hone or sharpen your knife. And when you're slicing through, make sure you're making a sliding, rocking, slicing motion through each green onion. And that's going to give you a nice, clean cut for your garnish. Also too, it's hard to tell from your picture. Definitely you can tell that your pasta sauce, your cheesy Alfredo, oops, I didn't want to do red there. Your cheesy Alfredo is clinging to it. And yeah, technically, when you talk about Alfredo, people say, oh, there's no heavy cream in Alfredo. But this is American Alfredo, right? Which is a little bit different. But you want to be careful when you're making an Alfredo or even any cream-based sauce, that it just doesn't get too thick and too rich, because if it does, it really tends to lie heavy on the palate, kills the rest of your seasoning, the rest of your delicate flavors, and so that's just something to be aware of. Again, that's not something I can tell by the picture, but if you eat it, you might just think it's a little bit heavy, and if it is, then that's where acid is your friend, and also heat in the form of spice or piquancy is your friend. So on top of this, if you were to eat it and it was a little bit heavy, some lemon juice would be great. Any sort of acidic little dash of something would be great. But for pasta specifically, I really enjoy lemon juice. And then also a little bit of chili flake right on top for a little bit of kick. And that kick will help to also cut through the richness and heaviness of an American-style creamy Alfredo sauce and kind of bring the whole thing back into balance. And that's it. So overall, great challenge. I love seeing everyone's submissions and being locked up and playing and, getting some cooking done. Again, thanks again to Joey and the rest of the mod team for putting this challenge together. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being part of the Stella Culinary community, and I will catch you on the flip side.